Our preschool had this annual harvest day at a local pumpkin farm. Pure, chaotic energy, but somehow it made all the stress feel worth it. The kids wore knit hats shaped like animals, and parents snapped photos like we were running a Hallmark commercial. I'd been there since dawn, setting up tables and checking name tags when this guy showed up. Tan jacket, baseball cap, easy smile. "I'm with the farm," he said, lifting a crate like he belonged. And just like that, he became part of the day. He was everywhere. Handing kids pumpkins, fixing the ring toss, carrying trays of cider cups. Helpful, quiet, never intrusive. He had that friendly dad energy, the kind that makes you relax. I didn't question it for a second. Every time someone raised a phone for pictures, though, he turned his head or walked out of frame. I noticed it, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was camera shy. Maybe he just hated Facebook. By mid-morning, he'd helped with everything. Set up activities, kept the kids in line, even picked up trash. So when the farm owner, Dan, asked, "Who's your helper?" I laughed. "Yours, I thought." Dan frowned. "We're short today. Who are you talking about?" I pointed toward the parking lot where Tan Jacket stood a few yards away, watching the line of our preschoolers heading to the petting zoo. He wasn't looking at the animals. He was watching the kids. "I'll go say hi," Dan said, heading over. The man shifted, hands in his pockets, like he was waiting for something. My skin prickled. For the first time all day, I realized I didn't know his name. Kayla, my co-teacher, came over. "Who's that?" she asked. "I thought he was farm staff. I thought he was with you." When I looked back, he was still there, close enough to see the brim of his cap tilt as the kids laughed at the goats. I started gathering everyone. "Hands on the rope, friends," I said, voice too bright, the kind of bright you use when you're covering nerves. We got everyone onto the hayride. I counted heads twice, then once more for luck. When we rolled back, I looked for the man. Gone. Dan met me near the cider tent, phone in hand, pale as paper. I asked him for ID. He said he was with your group, then slipped away when I turned. I just saw a bulletin. He turned the screen. A mugshot. The same eyes, the same smile, wanted for interstate offenses involving minors. It didn't feel like shock. It felt like a delayed echo. Like the world stayed the same, but my brain had caught something the air missed. I kept pouring cider while Dan called the sheriff. The cups overflowed. My hands didn't stop moving. The deputy came quietly. No sirens. Parents still milled around, taking last pictures, unaware. We didn't want panic. The officers searched the property. A mom led a sing-along so the kids wouldn't hear the radios crackle. They didn't find him. Just boot prints in the mud near the parking lot, fading toward the road. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the day. His calm voice, how he'd stood just behind me, how easily he'd blended in. The next morning, we changed everything. Volunteer wristbands, ID checks, no exceptions. Parents grumbled at first, then stopped when they saw the reason in my face. A week later, a deputy came by to follow up. "We're still looking," he said. I described the man again, the tan jacket, the way he hid from cameras. It all sounded too ordinary. That's what unsettled me most. Time passed. The news moved on. But something in me stayed on alert. Even now, I scan faces automatically. At the grocery store, at school events, anywhere kids gather. I still volunteer at the farm, but I stand near the gate now, eyes always moving. Sometimes I think about the parents who thanked me that day. "Thanks for keeping it fun." I smiled and said, "Of course," while inside I was replaying the moment he'd leaned close enough to hand me cups. That easy grin on his face. The farm added new rules, laminated tags, more staff. We told ourselves it couldn't happen again. But that's the thing about people like him. They look like someone who helps. Last October, during the next harvest day, I saw a man in a tan jacket again, near the lot. My heart stopped beating for a moment, but when I looked closer, it was just a dad helping his kid with a wagon. He waved. I waved back. Still, I didn't relax until he left. People always want the satisfying ending. Arrest made, justice served. Real life rarely gives that. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened, it's realizing how close it came. Now, every field trip starts the same. I check badges, count hands, double-check who's who. The kids sing about leaves and pumpkins. Parents take photos. The day looks just like it should. And when I look at those pictures later, my eyes always drift to the edges, scanning the background, just to make sure no one there looks like they belong when they don't. Halloween in Madison was a yearly ritual for me and my roommates. State Street turns into a moving carnival. Bass echoing between brick buildings, hot cocoa in travel mugs, and costumes ranging from perfect to lazy. That year, I wore silver wings and too much glitter. Danny was a disco queen, Kelly a vampire with platform boots. We left our apartment near Gorham around 9, half buzzed on peppermint schnapps and that weird optimism that comes before bad nights. We joined the crowd, bananas dancing, witches posing, someone handing out lollipops from a cauldron. The street felt electric, packed but safe. Everyone was playing dress up, and that's the trick of Halloween. The chaos feels controlled. The first time I saw him, he was just another face in the background. Amid all the colors, there was a guy in plain black jeans, hoodie, and a cheap black mask. Not a cool horror movie mask, just one of those dust masks from hardware stores. He stayed a few people behind us, never too close, never far. No props, no expression, just blank. Commit to a bit, I guess, I joked to Danny, pointing. She squinted. That's minimal effort. We laughed and kept walking. He didn't laugh. He didn't do anything. Every bar line, every crosswalk, he was there. If we stopped to take a picture, he stopped. If we crossed the street, he crossed. It wasn't aggressive, just parallel. That was worse somehow. Inside one of the bars, we danced, took selfies, got warm again. For 20 minutes, I forgot he existed. Then, when we stepped outside, cold air slapped my face, and there he was again, 4 people back, same blank mask catching the streetlight. He's still following us, I told Kelly. Then he's following like a gentleman, she said, rolling her eyes. Creeps love crowds. They can hide in plain sight. She was right, but it wasn't funny anymore. At every stop, he hovered across the street, leaning against a lamppost or slipping behind taller costumes whenever I looked. He just stayed, watching. The stillness was what got me. Everyone else was laughing, stumbling, spilling drinks. He held himself like he was on duty. Around 11, I decided to break the pattern. I ducked into a sidebar just to use the bathroom. When I finally pushed out the back door for air, I found myself in a quiet alley with one weak lamp overhead. I typed in our group chat, meet at Whiskey Jackson 10. And then I saw him. He was at the far end of the alley. Same mask, same stance, facing me dead on, not moving closer, just there. Hey, I called, mostly to hear myself say something. He didn't respond. The door opened behind me, spilling laughter and music into the alley. I slipped back inside, pretending it hadn't happened. I told Danny what I saw. She squeezed my hand. Stay with me. We'll walk together. We left with the crowd again, arms linked. Every time I turned, I caught a flicker of him, half hidden behind people, gliding when we did. Never rushing, never close enough to grab. That kind of calm makes your stomach twist worse than chaos does. By midnight, we were done. Kelly's boots were killing her. Danny's glitter had migrated into her eyes, and I just wanted home. We turned off State Street toward our car. The further we got from the noise, the more space there was for quiet, and for realizing we might be the only ones on that block. I looked back. Nothing. I let the tension fall out of me. He's gone, I said. Danny smiled. Told you it was fine. We piled into the car, blasting heat. My phone buzzed, text from our friend Bree, Send the pic with the creepy guy. I scrolled through the photos. Bathroom mirror shots, crowded street selfies, a blurry one from across the street. I zoomed in, expecting to see that black figure somewhere in the mix. But he wasn't in any of them. Not one. Even in photos where I knew he'd been right behind us. We laughed it off, because that's what you do when something makes no sense and it's too late to do anything about it. The next day, it still bothered me. So we went to campus police, not because we expected much, just to say it out loud. The officer on duty listened, wrote it down, asked if he'd spoken or touched us. When we said no, he said, "Still good to log. Patterns matter." We gave them our photos, the ones without him. They nodded like that wasn't the first time someone said something like this during Halloween weekend. We left with a pamphlet on staying safe in crowds. Maybe he was just a guy in a mask who knew how to stay unseen. Maybe the photos missed him. Maybe my mind filled in blanks after too much sugar and alcohol. I've told myself all the versions. None of them feel right. The next Halloween, we went again. Because of course we did. That's what you do when you're young and trying not to let fear rewrite your life. But this time we stayed in bigger groups, checked in every hour, and told 2 friends exactly where we'd be. The street was still chaos, still fun, still full of people pretending. But every now and then I'd catch myself scanning the crowd, looking for the plainest costume in sight. Because that's what real horror is made of. It hides in the ordinary. And sometimes it looks right at you. October in Salem sells itself. I didn't need gimmicks, ghosts, or overdone decor. The houses here, old colonials with mantels, wavy glass windows, and fireplaces that still smelled of ash, practically whispered their own stories. All I had to do was unlock the door and let people fall in love. That Saturday morning was crisp, the kind of air that makes your breath hang like fog and your coffee taste better than usual. I'd been prepping this listing for weeks. A 2-story white colonial with black shutters and a narrow yard that backed up to a small public park. It had character. Wide plank floors, crown molding, built-in shelves in the study. People wanted authentic Salem charm, and this place had it in spades. The open house was set for 1 o'clock, but I liked to arrive early to make sure everything looked perfect. The sellers had already moved to Vermont, so the house was completely empty. No furniture, no personal clutter, just my staging pieces. A few pumpkins on the steps, a throw blanket folded neatly over a borrowed chair, and a cinnamon candle I kept unlit because the scent alone did the job. I parked half a block down. Festival traffic had swallowed every spot near the house, and carried my open house 1:04 p.m. sign to the corner. The streets buzzed with tourists wearing scarves and witch hat headbands, cider cups steaming in their hands. I remember thinking how it was busy, but wholesome. The key clicked in the front door lockbox, just like it always did. That small sound was comforting, a signal that I was in control of this little pocket of real estate for the afternoon. The door opened with a soft groan, the kind that comes from wood swelling and shrinking over centuries. I started my usual routine: adjust the thermostat, check that every light bulb works, open the blinds just enough to let in sunlight but not glare. The floorboards gave gentle sighs as I moved through the house, and I smiled at that sound. Old houses like this always talked back a little. Then, halfway down the front hall, I saw 2 muddy footprints. At first, I didn't even process what I was looking at. Just 2 prints leading from the den toward the front door. Then 2 more, smaller but from the same shoes, stopping near the rug. The house had been locked since the final contractor left 2 days ago. I'd done the last walkthrough myself. It hadn't rained since yesterday afternoon, and I knew those floors were spotless then. I knelt down. Men's boots. Maybe size 10 or 11. The tread had a broken chevron in the center like an old work boot sole. I could smell the faint, damp earth mixed with something else. Something stale, like beer that had gone flat overnight. I straightened up slowly, looking toward the den. The door was open halfway, the way I'd left it, but the air that drifted through the room carried a soft, unmistakable draft. I followed it to the far window. The bottom sash was raised barely an inch. Not enough for a person to crawl through, but enough to let in the smell from outside. I stood still, just listening. And then I heard it, a faint clink, like glass tapping against wood, coming from somewhere outside. Probably a bottle rolling near the curb, I told myself. But still, the listing sheet on the entry table said, vacant. The house, on the other hand, said otherwise. I walked back to the door and stepped out onto the porch, picked up my phone and called the non-emergency police line. "Hi, this is an agent holding an open house on Elm Street," I said. "The property's supposed to be empty, but there are signs someone may have come in. I'm outside. Can you send a unit to take a look?" The dispatcher told me to wait on the porch. I agreed and hung up, but I didn't want to look like I was panicking. I leaned casually against the post and looked at the park across the street. People were walking dogs, carrying coffee, pushing strollers. Everything looked fine, normal even. And then, in the middle of that normalcy, I spotted him. A man in a long, grimy green coat stood behind a tree facing the house. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there. His hair was matted, and he had that aimless sway people get when they've had too much to drink and not enough to eat. When a couple walked past, he ducked his head, pretending to check his phone, though it didn't look like there was one in his hand. I kept my expression neutral and turned slightly so I could still see him through the reflection in the front door glass. My hand hovered over the deadbolt, but didn't turn it yet. Then came a sound from inside, so quiet I thought I imagined it. A faint scrape, like wire brushing against wood. It was coming from the parlor closet. I took a slow step back into the doorway, heart hammering harder now, though I tried not to show it. The noise stopped, then started again, quicker, like something shifting against hangers. I stepped outside fully, closed the door, and turned the lock. My fingers felt slick against the cold brass key, but it turned clean. I waited, eyes fixed on the man under the tree. He hadn't moved. Minutes stretched. Cars passed. Finally, 2 police cruisers rounded the corner, one pulling up in front of the house, the other idling across the street near the park. Relief washed over me in an instant, so sharp it almost hurt. The officers, a woman about my age and an older guy with a calm, practiced look, approached. I told them everything quickly. Footprints, open window, noises inside. They told me to stay on the porch while they checked. From where I stood, I could hear their steps inside, the creak of boards, a door opening, then another. Silence. Then a quick burst of radio chatter. Across the street, the second cruiser's door opened, and the younger officer crossed toward the man in the coat. He didn't run. He just stood there as the officer spoke to him. Even from this distance, I could tell he was trying to explain something, hands moving in wide, clumsy gestures. When the second officer came back out of the house, his expression told me everything. They'd found the source of the footprints. The man had slipped into the house the day before, after a contractor finished repairs and forgot to latch the window properly. Apparently, he'd been sleeping in the den, using an old blanket left behind from staging supplies. When I pulled up that morning, he must have panicked, climbed out the open window, and circled around to the park. He wasn't violent, just drunk, disoriented, and looking for a warm place to crash. The tread on his boots matched the prints exactly. "Looks like you startled him as much as he startled you," the older officer said with a smile. I nodded, though it didn't feel funny. I kept thinking how I'd walk through the house alone, humming to myself, completely unaware that someone might have been crouched behind a door or just left minutes before. The younger officer helped me relock the window, showing me how the latch hadn't fully caught before. "Keep the listing locked tight," he said. "These old houses are easy to slip into if someone's determined." "I'll add it to my checklist," I told him. They took the man to a shelter downtown instead of jail. I appreciated that. But once they left, the quiet settled in a strange way. I stood in the foyer for a while, staring at the muddy prints. They already looked older, drying into faint shapes that could almost be mistaken for shadows. I grabbed some paper towels and wiped them away until the floor gleamed again. I could have canceled the open house right then. No one would have blamed me. But professionalism can be a strange thing. It's equal parts pride and denial. I told myself the house was secure now, the scare was over, and people were expecting me. So I stayed. By 1 o'clock, the first couple arrived, a young pair from Boston, all smiles and pumpkin spice optimism. They didn't notice that I kept looking at the front door every few minutes. More people followed. The house filled with laughter and polite chatter, footsteps echoing where only mine had been that morning. It almost felt normal again. Almost. At one point, I caught myself watching the parlor closet door. It was closed now, but I remembered the scrape inside. I tried to laugh at myself. Salem realtor afraid of her own listings. That'd be great for business. The open house ended without incident. 3 solid leads, 1 potential offer. A success by any measure. But when I locked up, that calm didn't come back. I double-checked every window and door, then checked again. The following weekend, I hosted another open house, this time with a colleague. Different house, same pumpkin decor, same cheerful tone. But when she left to grab something from her car, I caught myself automatically scanning corners, listening for quiet sounds that shouldn't exist. I still love old houses. I still stage mantles with pumpkins and make them look like scenes from cozy postcards. But now, when I do, I keep one eye on the door. People in Salem like to joke about hauntings, about things that go bump in the night. But the truth is, ghosts don't leave footprints. And I'd rather take a ghost any day, because fear of a ghost sells stories. Fear of a person sells locks. I started the hayride job for extra cash and a bit of peace. It wasn't bad work. Stamp hands, count heads, wave the flatbed out into the fields. Kids squealed, parents sipped cider, couples took photos under the string lights. Our boss, Tom, was strict about one thing: counts. 20 up, 20 back, he'd say. Write it down every time. By mid-October, I could almost time it. 5 rides a night, 15 minutes each. That Saturday felt like every other, until it didn't. At 8:15, a group of teenagers showed up, 19 total. I clicked my counter, jotted it down, and told D, the tractor driver, 19 and maybe 2 more coming. D, an old bus driver with nerves of steel, shrugged. Close enough. The wagon rumbled off. I waited with a couple who'd arrived late. Then my radio crackled. You got a copy, station? It was D. Go ahead, I said. Check your sheet. I got 20. I frowned. You left with 19. Count again. I've got 20. I looked around the lot. No one had slipped in. The gate was chained, the other tractor parked. Maybe someone ran up late. If they did, I didn't see them. Her voice turned uneasy. They're quiet, just sitting in the back. When the wagon returned, families climbed down laughing, brushing hay from their coats. I counted 17, 18, 19. That was it. Where's your extra? I asked. Dee looked pale. They were there the whole ride, last row. I stepped onto the wagon. There it was, a hollow in the straw, shaped like someone had just stood up, still warm. Tom didn't buy it. Probably miscounted. Cold night, kids bundled up. Maybe he was right. Still, I wrote it on my clipboard. Driver reports extra passenger. The next ride went fine. So did the next. Then, Right before closing, Dee radioed again. Not funny anymore. It's back. She sounded serious now. Same spot, far corner. When they returned, I counted 19 again. The back seat was empty, but the straw showed the same imprint. Sunken deep, still warm. I told Tom. He rolled his eyes. It's Halloween season. Folks get spooked. Probably some kid hiding under a blanket and jumping early. We added a cone at the back step to stop riders from slipping off. The next night, the cone didn't help. At 7:50, Dee's voice came over the radio again. He's here. I didn't even ask who. I just knew. We decided I'd ride the last trip with her. Just to confirm, Tom said, pretending not to be nervous. I climbed on, flashlight in my lap, clipboard wedged between hay bales. 20 passengers, I told Dee. She nodded. Let's see what happens. The ride started quiet. Families joked. Kids giggled when the scarecrow props lit up. The night felt almost normal. At the halfway point, I recounted. 20. I did it again. Still 20. And then, near the far corner of the field, the wagon shifted. Just slightly, like someone had leaned forward from the last row. I turned my flashlight on. The straw was still, but the back end of the wagon looked heavier. Dee, I said, my voice thin. I feel it, she replied. Neither of us turned around. When the tractor hit the final stretch, I heard 2 soft thuds like boots dropping from a step. The weight eased. Back at the gate, I counted again. 20 riders. All human. All present. The impression was there again. Deep, warm, and unmistakable. Tom's face lost its usual color when I showed him. We'll check the cameras, he said. We did. The footage showed the wagon loading up. People boarding, laughing, waving. Then it rolled out toward the field. But when it came back, for one frame, just before stopping, something blurred across the bottom of the image. Pale, human-shaped, crouched near the back corner. Lens flare, Tom muttered. Lens flare doesn't cast shadows, I said. He didn't answer. That night, we found a small black duffel bag on the counter in the barn office. None of us had seen anyone bring it in. Inside was a yellowed hospital wristband, a folded piece of paper with the name Andrew, and a photo album. The pictures were old, early 2000s, maybe. They showed our hayride wagon, the same field, same gate. In one photo, a boy sat in the back row, elbows on knees, staring toward the horizon. A white hospital band glinted on his wrist. Tom sighed. Probably some local kid playing a trick. Drop it off at the sheriff's office in the morning. He zipped the bag shut. That's when Dee called from outside. Hey, there's a guy here asking about lost and found. Says he left a bag. Tom and I exchanged looks. He whispered, play it normal. I stayed behind the counter while he went to meet the man. Gray jacket, brown hair, calm face. Left my bag here, he said. Black duffel. Small. Tom asked for ID. The man patted his pockets. Must have left it in the car. What's your name? Andrew. Tom froze for just a second before saying, wait here. He stepped outside toward the lot. I saw him gesture to the deputy parked near the entrance. The man looked at me through the counter window. His smile didn't change. Long night? He asked. Always, I said, keeping my hand near the radio. He nodded slowly, like he was listening for something behind me. You looked in the album, didn't you? Before I could answer, the door swung open. The deputy stepped in, calm but firm. Sir, let's talk outside. The man's eyes flicked between us. It's mine, he said. Then he went with the deputy. No struggle, no argument. We handed the bag and album over to the sheriff that night. They logged everything, thanked us, and left. By the next morning, both the bag and the album were gone. Transferred, they said. We changed protocol. Every ride double counted, one staffer on board, rope across the back step. Nothing strange happened after that. I don't believe in ghosts, not really. But I believe in repetition. Things that loop until they find the ending they were supposed to have. Every October, my friends and I went to the same drive-in. Blankets in the hatchback, popcorn salt everywhere, and an old horror double feature glowing against the night. It was our tradition. Half nostalgia, half excuse to escape whatever the world was doing. That year, the marquee read, Creature from the Black Lagoon and Night of the Living Dead. We got there early, parked near the center, and set up our little nest of quilts and snacks. It felt timeless, like we'd slipped into another decade. Kids ran between cars chasing glow sticks, a couple danced near the concession stand, and every now and then a breeze rippled through the blankets. I leaned back, listening to the radio crackle the film's sound through the car speakers. Halfway through the first movie, I volunteered to grab more popcorn. Each step echoed off the parked cars, and for a second I thought I heard someone pacing alongside me. Probably my imagination. The night had that kind of acoustics. At the counter, a tired teenager slid a bag toward me through a plexiglass window. "Enjoy the show," he said. I turned back toward our car, juggling popcorn and soda, when something moved low between two rows, a crouched figure slipping from shadow to shadow. They held a flashlight close to the ground. At first, I thought it was a staff member looking for something someone dropped, but the closer I looked, the more off it seemed. They weren't wearing any kind of uniform, just dark clothes and a ski mask pulled down to the neck. The flashlight jerked, flashing briefly across something long and metallic in their other hand. For a heartbeat, I stood there telling myself it was fake. A prop. A prank. Anything that would make sense at a drive-in showing horror movies. Then the flashlight swung toward me. I ducked behind a pickup truck, trying to calm my breathing and not make a sound. The beam lingered on the ground where I'd just been. I could hear the low crunch of their boots. The crowd laughed at something on the screen, oblivious. I waited until the light drifted away, then moved quickly back toward our car, keeping to the dark gaps between bumpers. When I reached my car, I hissed, "Get in, lock the doors." "What's going on?" Lauren whispered. "There's someone out there," I said. "Mask, flashlight, I think they're armed." She stared at me, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, she grabbed the key fob from my hand and hit lock. Somewhere in the distance, a horn blared, one long, endless blast. Another joined in, then another. The noise rose like an alarm. The radio crackled with the manager's voice. "Please stay in your vehicles. Security is responding." But people panicked anyway. Doors slammed, engines started, cars tried to move all at once. Headlights flared and blinded half the lot. Someone reversed into another car, crunching bumpers. The neat rows turned into chaos. In our mirror, a dark shape moved again. Running this time, weaving between cars. I caught a glimpse of the ski mask, the glint of metal, then nothing. "Start the car," Lauren said. I turned the key halfway, enough for power but not the engine. Every brake light around us glowed red, taillights painting the air. I could see kids crying in the back of a van, their parents yelling for everyone to stay put. My stomach clenched so hard it hurt. Then blue light cut across the lot. A patrol car pulled in, followed by another. Floodlights swept the rows, blinding and merciful all at once. The masked figure froze in their glare, still crouched, caught like an insect under glass. Officers shouted commands we couldn't hear through the glass. The person raised their hands, slow, then dropped to their knees. The metal object, a gun, clattered to the gravel. For a long, suspended moment, no one moved. Then one officer moved forward, cuffed the person, and guided them to the cruiser. The relief hit like exhaustion. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put them in my lap. The radio voice came back. "All clear. Please remain in place until officers direct traffic." I watched the crowd begin to uncoil. Parents hugging their kids, couples whispering. The projector kept running, the film flickering on like it hadn't noticed any of it. The monster on the screen lunged forward, and people actually laughed this time. Nervous, shaky laughter, but real. When it was our turn to leave, an officer waved us through. As we passed, I looked at the floodlight-lit spot where the man had knelt. Popcorn and a single shoe lay on the gravel, surreal in their normalcy. The next morning, the drive-in posted an announcement online. No injuries reported. Increased security measures to be implemented immediately. It ended with a thank you for everyone's calm cooperation. I laughed out loud at that. Calm wasn't the word I'd use. 2 weeks later, we went back. Because that's what you do. You reclaim the places that scare you, or they start to own too much space in your mind. The manager had kept his promise. New lighting, security patrolling every row, and only one exit lane. Still, when we parked, I found myself counting how many cars stood between me and that exit. I caught myself looking at the side mirrors more than the screen. Every crunch of gravel behind us made me stiffen. But the night stayed peaceful. A cop leaned on his cruiser near the gate, sipping coffee. Kids laughed again, but softer this time. Like the world had collectively learned how easily the fun could tilt the other way. When the first movie started, the projector beam turned the air silver. It should have felt comforting. But all I could think about was how a shadow had once moved through that same beam, changing everything in seconds. Halfway through the movie, Lauren nudged me. "You okay?" I nodded, just paying attention. The truth was, I hadn't stopped paying attention since that night. It's funny, fear doesn't always make you hide. Sometimes it makes you watch harder. Stay present in a way peace never demands. Now, every October, we still go back. We still bring blankets and cocoa, still argue about snacks, but we sit closer to the exit, windows cracked, eyes always scanning without even realizing. It's not paranoia, it's memory wearing a new shape. I used to think the magic of those nights came from nostalgia. Now I think it's from contrast. The comfort of routine brushing against the reminder of how fragile it really is. People like to say fear is irrational. I think it's the most rational thing we've got. It just tells the truth too bluntly. That night at the drive-in, it whispered in every engine rev and muffled scream, "You're never as safe as you think." And yet, we keep showing up. That's what humans do. We set up our blankets, pour the cocoa, and trust the light to hold the dark back just long enough for the credits to roll. The news barely covered the incident. Just a small piece about an armed man apprehended before hurting anyone. October still feels like movies, but I always park near the exit now. If these stories made you realize that real danger doesn't need ghosts, just the right night and the wrong person, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scary story, and let me know which story will be living rent-free in your head tonight. And if you've ever driven past a cornfield at night and felt watched, you'll want to keep your headlights on for this one. Click now to watch 4 terrifying cornfield horror stories. Because sometimes the silence between the rows is someone breathing. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.